Welcome back. Today we're talking about 12 things I really wish I knew before I started gardening. These are some things that I've learned along the way through trial and error. And really, if you learn these, they should help save you a lot of time, money, and most importantly, a lot of stress. Number one, not knowing my growing zone. Growing zones in the US help us as gardeners determine which plants will survive or thrive best in our area based on the average temperatures. They especially help us with minimum temperatures because certain plants, don't do well in very cold environments while others do amazingly in cold environments. Growing zones also directly impact crops such as garlic. And so, like with you're looking at things like soft neck versus hard neck garlic. And, one variety that hard neck normally is something that's normally considered for certain zones, and the soft neck is normally considered for like a warmer southern climate. So they help us with those. They also help us with things like looking at onions. Onions come in short day, intermediate, and long day varieties. So growing zones help us to determine up front what should grow well in our area in theory so we won't waste money on seeds and things that aren't for our area. So, our fix for mistake one is to use the USDA zone map. I'm going to link it down in the comments. You can just pop your zip code right in there and it'll give you your zone. It'll let you kind of know what area you're in, and then you can take that zone and do further research to figure out what crops will work well for your area. Number two, planting crops at the wrong time. One thing that I've learned early on during the first year of gardening was that, contrary to popular belief, a lot of the crops that we associate with certain seasons don't necessarily grow in those seasons. For example, we see sweet potatoes in the wintertime, and you would think maybe that's, we're associated with holidays. Thanksgiving, Christmas, fall, things of that nature. But sweet potatoes actually love the heat and they grow in the heat so they can be harvested in the fall and eaten in the fall. So it's funny. I would just, off top just would think they like cooler weather, but that's not the case. So these are the kind of things that you can think about when you're thinking about planting crops for the first time. Your fix here will be to use a combination of the zone information we mentioned on number one, and then you'll use frost dates. I'll pop a frost date calculator down in the description so you can find out when your frost dates occur for your area, and that will help you with planning windows. You'll be able to count forward or back from those dates to determine when you need to plant all the crops in your garden. The third mistake is not locating containers in the right spots. Our gardens not only are subject to the overall climate and growing zones that we talked about already, there are also such things as microclimates that happen within our own yards. There are different areas of your yard that will have different climates just by the way shade falls, where your trees are, if you've got a patio, all of that, and that's casting shade, all of that affects and impacts the microclimates, how much water that area is getting, all those different things. So you have to be mindful of that and also be mindful of full shade versus partial shade, or full sun, I should say, full sun versus partial shade with your crops, because there are things like melons and cucumbers that love a ton of full sun, but then you've got other plants like bell peppers, and they can suffer sun scald if they get too much sun. Bell peppers do like warm weather, but they don't like a full sun all day. And if you get that sun scald, you'll know it because it does literally look like there's a burnt spot on your bell pepper. The fix here is going to be an easy one. You'll just check your seed packets to see how much sun the plant needs. Most of these seed packets do come with that on the back of them. If for some reason it doesn't, you can always go to like the website of the seed company and it should list those details, or actually in the seed catalog if you have a paper catalog or a digital catalog, it should tell you whether it's a full sun or partial shade plant, and that will help you position your containers in the right locations. Timing matters. You would think that it would be good to water in the midday sun, but that can lead to rapid evaporation of your water, which means you can end up wasting water. And if you're in triple digit temperatures, you can even scorch your leaves, or either you have almost like a boiling effect on your plant. So you'll want to water at one of two times, either early in the morning, so right at sunrise or even before sunrise, or in the evening at sunset or near sunset. That way, your plants can absorb the moisture without the sun evaporating that moisture away from them. Of the two watering options, I found that watering at or near sunset works best if possible. That allows your plants to take that water in overnight and to really let that moisture soak in without having to deal with the heat and sun evaporating everything off. It just kind of lets the plants soak that water in and hydrate unbothered. Number five, not properly timing organic pest control. If you use things like Captain Jacks that I've used before, they work on pests, but they also work on beneficial insects. And that's important to know. We want to keep our bees and things of that nature because those are our pollinators that are helping our garden grow. So that's something to think about. And there's definitely a certain time that you want to do that to prevent eliminating your good pollinators. Similar to our watering issue, we want to reduce the chance that we'll kill off our beneficial insects. So we're going to use our pest control at or near sunset after our beneficial pollinators have retired for the day. You'll notice over your garden over time that you'll see the bees out there just hard at work a lot of times in the morning or the midday, but they do tend to kind of disappear right before sunset. So that's why you want to let them do their job for the day. They're working hard for us for free and we're going to let them do their job unbothered. Then we want to come in later and do that pest control so it soaks in overnight, also where it doesn't bother our beneficial pollinators. Number six, watering the wrong way. There's a right and a wrong way to water our plants. It's easy to stand with a hose over your plant and shower it, just standing over it. The issue is that you get the leaves wet. And when you get the leaves wet, a lot of times that can introduce disease. That's not something that I know that I would have known, right beforehand. That's why I said it's one of those mistakes that I've learned over time. And so we want to focus on hydrating the plant without getting the leaves wet. So, our fix is to focus on watering at the roots as much as possible. That will help us reduce the chance of disease and we'll make sure our soil is getting hydrated and those roots that are down underneath that soil are getting the hydration they need. That hydration will transfer up through the plant. So we just want to make sure we hit the base of the plant with the water and get some good deep watering and the plant will do the rest. Number seven is for getting drainage holes on the DIY pots. As I mentioned in another video, I do a lot of things and grow things like cucumbers, especially bell peppers in 5-gallon buckets, and they grow fantastically. But I use a lot of different buckets for different things. I have buckets I measure when I make my soil, my DIY soil from scratch. I measure that in buckets, and it's easy sometimes to pick up a bucket that I think is one that's a planter bucket and it's actually a soil bucket and then you forget to put the drainage holes in them. So, that's always something that you want to make sure you try to remember to do. I would say as soon as you get them. I use food safe buckets from hardware stores and I also get recycle containers from delis. They'll have like icing buckets and things of that nature, and those work well. Just like I said, make sure they're food safe. If you have a power drill on hand, it's a good idea to go ahead and drill 4 or 5 holes in the bottom of your container before you even put it in the garden. And then you'll have it ready because if you forget and fill that pot up and you think it's or the bucket up and you think it's one that's got drainage and you forget and it doesn't, you're gonna get end up with waterlogged seeds. And you would think, well, I would know, and you won't necessarily know because you water the seeds and the water drains out, and you will realize it when you go out probably the next day or so and you realize, wait a minute, this one didn't drain. And ask me how I know. Ask me how I know about this. So yeah, you just want to try to drill those holes before you even put it in the garden if you plan to use it for planting, and that will help you with that issue. Number 8 is about spacing. It can be easy to overplant and overcrowd beds, especially in raised beds. It's easy to overestimate how many plants can fit. If you do that, you end up with the plants competing for nutrients and light. And you also can have a greater risk for pest issues and disease due to poor airflow, because airflow is always important with our crops. Also, when you're dealing with things like melons, overcrowding it can actually stunt the growth of them. And so you really want to always pay attention to that. You want to make sure that everything's spaced out well, because if you have fewer well spaced plants, that's going to yield a better crop than a tightly packed bed of plants competing with each other. The fix here is to use a measuring tape or a paint stirrer that's got measurement marks on it, and that will help you space your seeds out. I get the paint stirrers from the hardware store. Right now, you can get a pack of 10 medium-sized ones for about $2. So and this is the thing I love about them. They double as labels also for the plants. So I buy those and use those all the time. And as I'm planting, I'm actually using those to space the seeds out as I go along, and that helps with reduction of overcrowding and overplanting. Number 9 is underestimating the importance of container shape. As you plant different types of crops, you'll realize over time that different shape containers work better for different crops. For example, if you like to plant garlic and or onions, you're probably going to go better with a shape that's square or rectangle as opposed to a round container. And then those round containers tend to work better for vertical plants like cucumbers and melons, where the fruit is not actually growing in the soil. And you'll kind of gauge that over time as you grow different things. But container shape can really matter, and it can be the difference in you being able to plant more crops if you choose the right container shape. And again, here you just want to kind of do a little research to find out which container may work best for that particular crop. For number 10, I know how it is. You get excited, you got a seed catalog, you're new to this, or you've only been doing it maybe a year or two, and you're like, I'm getting ready to try. I'm going to try all these different crops. I'm going to try all these different things. They look cool in the catalog. And then you just kind of start planting random crops. The issue with this is it's so easy. To do that, and then you realize you're kind of in over your head. So you want to kind of always do what you can handle, and or you might waste food or end up trying to give something away to other people, and that can kind of be a hit or miss when you're trying to give away food crops. You would think it would probably hit, but it doesn't always hit. So you just want to always be kind of intentional when you're planting a garden. So you want to think about the things that you eat on a weekly basis and the herbs that you use consistently. And you only want to plant what you're eating and using consistently. That'll help you with this issue. Okay, we're almost done. Number 11 is taking on too much too soon, and it's kind of related to number 10. Gardens can be great stress relievers, but they also require upkeep, fertilizing, watering, pruning. You may have to do weeding if you're doing in-ground. Weeding is not an issue most container gardeners, but it's just easy to get excited the first year, and you're taking control of your food supply, so you know exactly what's going in and on your food. So you get excited. You order dozens of packs of seeds, and this can become overwhelming if you don't really kind of let that build organically. There are ways to build the garden without getting overwhelmed, but if you do too much too soon, it's easy to get overwhelmed, and that will take the joy out of gardening. So the fix here is to start small the first year. You want to order a few seed catalogs and flip through them and mark the seeds that you actually eat that appeal to you most. Then you'll order those and only start with a few of them. You don't have to do everything, because what's going to help you is to master two or three plants. Someone recently asked me, what's the quick, easiest thing to start? And I told them the easiest thing to start is going to be tomatoes or like some type of pepper plant, especially if you did like the cherry style tomatoes. Those are probably going to be easy, especially if you've got a small space. So start with like those two things. Find out the time of year that they need to be planted, the time frame for them to actually mature, and get master those. Once you master those, then you can move on to other crops. And number 12, not labeling. This is one that's kind of like, I think people feel like it's an extra step, but it really is something that you want to do. You'll want to label everything as soon as you plant it. And I know you say, well, I can use these apps and I can shoot the camera at my plant, but a lot of times those apps are going to tell you, it's a tomato versus it's a cucumber. Like if you go out there and plant four different kinds of tomatoes and they all have a different maturity window, because within these crops they have different maturity windows. There are some sweet potatoes, for example, that are ready in 90 days. There are other ones that need like 120 days, things like that. So if you plant those crops and you don't label them, and then when you shoot that app at it and say, what is this? And it's like, oh, it's a sweet potato, but okay, yeah, but which variety? When we're getting down to the nitty gritty details, you want to know exactly what it is, so you'll know what time frame when it should mature for your area. Remember those cheap paint stirrers we got in packs of 10 for about $2 on number 8? This is where we'll use those. And I've found it's a great idea to buy a few packs of those paint stirrers and get a waterproof marker. And what I like to do as a tip is to prepare my labels early before I even go outside to plant. So then when I'm out there, in the midst of everything, I don't have to stop and label. And especially if it's hot, if you do it beforehand and you look at your seed packets and prepare your labels based on the seed packets, that's helpful. So once you're out there, everything's done, everything's good to go, and you can just pop those labels right in the soil. So I want to thank you for joining me today as I talk about 12 lessons I've learned from these first couple of years of gardening. And it's funny because as I was doing this list, I actually thought of some more things, some even tips that are even better than these. And so I'm going to do a part two. So if you don't want to miss part two of that, hit like, hit subscribe. And so you can join me for that as I go over some more tips, some more mistakes, some more lessons learned that have helped make my garden better over time. Thanks for joining me today, and see you next time.